Please take your seats. Thank you. I call to order this Champaign County Board Committee of the Whole, Tuesday, May 14th at 6:01 p.m. Can I please have a roll call? Thank you.
Harper. Hartkey. James. Jay. Kibler. Langenheim. Maxwell. McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie. Quisenberry. Richards. Rosales.
Here.
Schrader. Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Carter. Cowart. Esri. Kurtz.
Here. Thank you. I'd like a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Rosales, first by Mr. James. Committee of the Whole minutes, April 11th, 2013. May I have any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the agenda and addendum. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Carter. Second. Mr. Esri. One change, if you go back to your third page, on legislative update E3, I propose removing that since the legislation has been pulled at the state and will not be acted on. So we don't need to have that on our agenda this evening. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public participation. I do have one. I'm sorry. I have one here. Miss Shana Harrison.
Hi there.
Hi.
My name is Shanna Harrison. I live in Urbana.
You need to.
Introduce yourself and turn on the microphone, please.
Hi, my name is Shanna Harrison, and I'm a resident in Urbana. Today I'm here to talk to you about House Bill 924. So I've got some fact sheets that I can pass out to you, and it also has a list of the counties that already have this ordinance in place. One of the counties so happens to be Champaign. On August 20th, 2002, Champaign County already passed a responsible bidder ordinance. So in effect, we already have this policy in place for our county. Some concerns have been raised about small contractors not being able to bid on projects because they're not going to have a certified apprenticeship program through the UCDOL, when in fact that's not true here in Champaign. Extreme and Terry Clark actually have their own certified apprenticeship programs. So there are two examples of contractors here who have not been impacted at all by being a small contractor and having the ability to bid on county projects. Also, when you start to look at kind of the points of the bill, a lot of it is just to make sure that the employer is being a responsible bidder, that they're upholding the Prevailing Wage Act, that they're paying their employees properly, that they do have qualified apprentices, because what has happened in certain counties across the state is the state will enter into a contract and they end up having to do the job twice. So taxpayers have to pay for the same project to be done twice because the contractor doesn't have certified apprentices who can do the job properly. So a lot of this is just making sure redundancies do not happen and making sure that when we go to contract a job out, the contractor has qualified workers so we can get the job done right the first time. Do you all have any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak at public participation? Okay, I close public participation. Are there any communications from the board? All right, seeing none. Thank you. I'd like to bring up Mr. Chris Alex for finance, please.
Okay, first item on the finance agenda is reports from the treasurer. His monthly reports are on the website, and he has a letter regarding property tax, potential property tax refunding for President's Health, and he will speak to us about both of those.
Good evening. Yeah, my reports are on my website. Just a quick thing about real estate taxes. You may have gotten a bill in the mail. May 3rd, we sent those bills out, 73,000 of them, and at the close of business today, we're 5.56% collected, which is right on where we should be. 1% represents about $3 million. That'll give you an idea where we're at. If there's any other questions about my report specifically, I'd be glad to answer those. If not, I'd ask that it be accepted and placed on file, please.
Moved by Mr. Jay, seconded by Mr. James. Is there any discussion or additional questions? Seeing, hearing none. All in favor, please say yes. Yes, no. Okay. Talk about presents.
Yeah, the letter to the taxing districts about presents is a letter I've been sending out since 2003. For Carl, I've been sending out since 2005. Tells the taxing districts, in my humble opinion, what the potential liability might be. Without being a law degree, I couldn't really tell you specifically what it is, but we've made refunds, and I know those years are not completely undone or done with yet. So it's the best guess that I have. As you can see about presents, 97% of the money goes to one tax increment finance district in the city of Urbana. Unlike Carl, where it goes to almost all the different taxing districts. Also, the difference between the two is when we started with presents, Provena, there were 43 parcels. Eventually went to 68, and we've been dealing with 68 over all the rest of the years, and so that's I give them an estimate if they pay everything in full each year. I add that to the previous total and then tell them what the liability might be. The issue with Carl is that when they lost their exempt status, and then in 2005, then they appealed on 4 parcels. And so we were keeping track of 4 parcels at about $2 million a year for each, for the total of 4 parcels. But once the new law in the state of Illinois was enacted, they were able to apply for exempt status for 78 parcels, which meant that the $2 million we were keeping track of was really more like $6 million. So the tax districts obviously were surprised to see what could happen. I mean, of the 78 parcels, 71 were completely zeroed out or totally exempt, and 7 had a little bit of a partial value. So you could see that it was just the way the law was structured that it made a big difference between 4 and 78 parcels and a whole lot of money. In the case of presents, they decided, and I've talked to Stan, I can't find anybody that can tell me why Presidents decided not to file for exempt status this year based on the new law. We don't know. My guess is with all those attorneys that there's a good reason for it, and we'll probably find that out at some point. So if you have any specific questions about Provena or Carl or Presidents, I'd be glad to answer those.
Mr. Rosales?
For the landowners of residents of Champaign County, will there be an additional charge so that we could cover these expenses?
I'm not really sure what you mean. What I'm reporting here is that, in this case, President says 68 parcels that they're going to pay taxes on this year, about $1,359,000. I just break that down to a tax district level and said, if we had to give this back sometime in the future, this is what your liability is. Now, these include the years of 2003, 2005, and 7 through 12. So we're talking about 10 years, 3 years have been decided, maybe, and that these are the ones that are left out there. So all we're saying to the tax district is, if it comes to it, whether we have to make a refund, I suggest that you maybe hold this money back. In the case of Champaign County or almost everybody other than the TIF district, it really is irrelevant because 97% of it's just going to one TIF district in the city of Urbana. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, I'm getting the impression that all of a sudden Presidents is going backwards and saying, well, we lost all these tax years.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to claim them because we've always should have been tax exempt. And
Right.
because of this decision, now we are tax exempt and we were going back to 2003 to claim those taxes that we paid in 2003. And I'm wondering whether we, the citizens, have to reimburse that to the county so that the county could reimburse presence.
No, it would be, the idea would be the county would be accumulating that money and holding it aside. If they had to get it back, then they would have it. Presents, if they in fact believe that they're tax exempt, didn't file for that status this year, for whatever reason. Now, I'll get a little bit into the workings of it. They've had rulings from 2002 by the Illinois Supreme Court, and they lost that case, and that money was eventually decided by the city of Urbana to be redistributed back to taxing districts. Then they had filed for 2004, 2006, and 2010. And recently, in March, we got the ruling for 2004, 2006, which meant that they were going to get back $1.183 million in refund. So 2010 is still out there. My guess is what's happening is that they believe that the law allows them, if they get a certificate of error, to make a correction in a particular year to go back 3 years from that. So if you had 2006, you need to go back 5, 4, and 3. 2002, they already lost. If they get 2010, then you get to go 9, 8, 7. Then you're already 3 through 10. So if they waited till 2013 and filed again, then they could get potentially 12, 11, 10. So that's how they're thinking.
So
We don't believe that that's correct. We believe that the only reason they're able to go back is because new state law allows them to do that.
So there's no statute of limitation because the state has allowed them to go back.
Well, it's a theory of their attorney versus the theory that our attorneys have. So when I say I've taken out 2004, 2006, and 2002, well, yeah, there's been a ruling made, and we made refunds based on that. But if their theory holds true, they may still be able to go back and do other years. So it encompasses all those years. So we're telling everybody, don't, City of Urbana, here's $10 million you better hold on to just in case. It's a very complicated case.
And they usually like to wait for the last minute to go ahead and file,
Well, Carl did that.
conveniently.
Carl did that,
Okay, well, thank you very much, Stan.
yeah.
Are there any additional questions for the treasurer? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you.
Send up the auditor.
Good evening. Our report's on the website if you have any questions about that. Otherwise, I ask you just to accept it and place it on file.
May I have a motion to do so? Mr. James and Mr. Carter. Any questions for Mr. Farney? All in favor of accepting, Ms. Petrie?
Well, it's not on this report, I'd have one outside of that, so it doesn't to the report.
All in favor of accepting the report and placing it on file, say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. We will do that. Ms. Petrie, was your question about his next item?
Yes, is that okay? or
Sure.
not? Would you talk a little bit more about why you want to change the parameter?
Yes, absolutely. That was the next thing we were going to bring up, the capitalization threshold, yes.
I jumped the gun, sorry.
Yeah,
On-
we're gonna-
on your
we're gonna
addendum
jump
this
to the
evening.
addendum here and talk about limits or increase in the capitalization thresholds.
Ms. Ramsey and I were reviewing documents for the 2012 CAFR, and one of the items that has not been reviewed at the county level for the last several years is our capitalization threshold. And that's why I brought Barbara with me this evening, because she's much more of an expert on the wonderful world of accounting. And so if you have questions about specifics on that, I will defer to her and her vast knowledge on that.
GFOA, since 2006, has recommended that any capitalization level should not be below $5,000. Currently, the county's capitalization level is at $2,500. It adds a significant amount of work to the accounting department and to staff, and certainly we're not in keeping with the recommended level for capitalization. As we're looking at this too, you can have various levels of capitalization. Currently, we have $10,000 for buildings and infrastructure. We recommend that we move the $10,000 to $25,000, and that infrastructure goes to $100,000. It is not unusual to have these various levels of capitalization in a government. Certainly, we strongly recommend the $5,000 for individual items. If I can quote the Government Finance Officers Association, it says, "In no case should the government establish a capitalization threshold of less than $5,000 for any individual item." And this has been the recommendation since 2006. At this point, I think we have provided you with a comparison of what some of the other counties are doing. And certainly, if you look at that and you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Ms. Petrie?
I have a follow-up. I appreciate wanting to follow the recommendations of your professional group and looking at what other communities have done, and they're probably following those recommendations. The gap of understanding for me is, why did that professional organization make that recommendation? Does it purely have to do with workload, or are there other
I think
reasons?
I think it may not have done necessarily to do with workload, but that's what makes perfect sense now. And since the GASB 34 came into being, and we had to report infrastructure, they had a review of what we were doing. If you remember, at some point, I think we used to capitalize items over $500, and then it moved to $1,000, and it kept moving up. And once we implemented GASB 34, they realized that capitalization level of anything below $5,000 really makes less sense.
Ms. Schwartz,
Certainly.
did I see your hand?
Yeah, that's a question. So if it was regular accounting, I know you depreciate what you capitalize. In government accounting, do you depreciate what you capitalize?
Yes, we do. We do. We
Okay.
depreciate.
So it's just a matter of, if you didn't capitalize, you would expense everything today.
Correct.
And if you did capitalize, you expense it over multiple years. But
Exactly.
it's- Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Bergson?
Why is their building threshold so much higher than everyone else's?
That was a recommendation we had. It's certainly up to the committee to decide if they want to hold that.
Don't know, do we actually have any buildings that would be worth less than $50,000?
That's the discussion that JJ and I was thinking, and we didn't think we had too many buildings that would not be capitalized at this point, even with the increase in the threshold.
Okay, after concurring with Deb, I think I'll entertain a motion to forward this to the full board with a recommendation for approval. If that's successful, then we'll bring a resolution. It'll be, resolution language will be brought to the full board. So could I have a motion in support of this? Mr. Quisenberry, and second by Ms. Schwartz. Are there any additional comments or questions? Mr. Carter?
Oh. I'm sorry, y'all. Oh, man. I apologize. Got to turn it off. Turn it off. You know, I'm not trying to make a burst, but any more important positions and stuff, we don't seem to get it where we can discuss it anymore. These are two new positions.
Oh, that's different. That's,
Oh, I'm
oh,
sorry.
okay. Yeah, we're not talking
I done
positions
got
now.
off. Yeah. I'm sorry, boy, I don't know.
Okay, do we have any additional comments or questions regarding the capitalization limits? Seeing none, all in favor, please say yes. Yes. Anybody say no?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item on the finance agenda is the nursing home monthly report that was presented in your packet. I apologize for the length. You ended up getting the entire nursing home board of directors packet as opposed to just the financial section because Mr. Gima didn't have time to put it together, to pare it down. I'd like to give Mr. Harkey and/or Mr. Maxwell an opportunity to speak about the nursing home board of directors meeting and/or answer questions.
For a second.
Mr. Harkey.
Gary, of course, as usual, put out a great little mini report for everybody to look through. One thing about this problem with the long report, we are considering moving our meetings to the third Monday of the month, which is going to allow an extra week to prepare more timely information because we can go back to the month before. We're not looking at March and May. So hopefully that will help. We also, on the dietary issue, the dietary manager is instituting some very interesting policies. We got a much better score on our public health examination once we got the water heater running properly again. And I look forward to what this dietary, it sounds like she's got some great ideas involving more of a service-oriented atmosphere as opposed to having people come up and dish stuff out of old pans that we aren't keeping to proper temperatures. So there's a lot of good ideas there, and I'll leave it up to Gary to address the number stuff that was in his report.
Mr. Chair, thank you. You all have maybe had time to read the report, and unless there's some specific questions, I'll just put the report before you and leave it at that.
Mr. McGuire.
Not a difficult question. It looks like the census is dropping off. Do they address that issue more directly?
We did discuss that at length, and I've been following it very closely. One of the things we're asking for is, again, to have these numbers for us more timely, which means we'd like to see, for instance, this month, the May meeting, we only saw the March figures. So we're trying to address some of those issues. It's a cyclical thing, we believe. And we expect the census to increase through the fall. The question was posed last night, what if it doesn't? And our nursing home administrator says that we staff for census, and we can make adjustments to the staffing levels to accommodate a reduction in the long-term census.
Thank you. Ms. Michaels?
I just have a quick question for you. I was just kind of going through this pretty quickly. And on page 11, it says something about the non-labor expenses increased by 23,500. Okay, fine. But the non-labor costs declined. And I thought that was kind of interesting that your expenses increased, but your per-day cost declined. I know that, you know, like when you have the heater and all that kind of stuff, that affects everybody no matter what, but I thought that was kind of interesting because it talks about non-labor costs. And I would think that if the expenses increase, generally the daily amount should increase. Just a thought, if you want to look at that later.
I wish I could answer that question, but I simply can't right now, Diane.
Josh, you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, one point that was made was that it was a 31-day month instead of a 28-day month, so you divide by 31 and you get a smaller number. Well, I did not do the math myself to get that, so I can't say, but I do see that that would reduce your, you know, that was one of the reasons given. Yeah, there's a lot of watching on these numbers, and we're trying to follow down. I think part of the problem is they've had such a large amount of management turnover in the last 6 months, from Karen Nofke, the administrator, taking over, to, you know, a new dietary manager, a new social services manager, and things like that. And we're paying off some interim, because we're paying interim costs for people to serve in those positions in interim, which is always more expensive than just hiring somebody. I'm hoping to see some of these numbers settle down. We're also, you know, it's things we're tracking. I can't say exactly specifically what that number is, though.
I've got Chester. I think Ms. Schwartz was next. Okay, Ms. Bergson.
When they were doing their annual report, I spoke to them about the food, and they explained to me that even though they were spending $5 a day, you know, the food was really quite wonderful. And I understand it wasn't. And people who have a choice of where to go care about whether the food is any good or not. So I hope this new nutrition person is going to restore the food, and I think they probably should do some kind of promoting to inform people if the food is going to be decent again. Because when you get a bad reputation, you have to do something active to improve it.
Mr. Harkey?
To that, Astrid, we seriously, and because of the census going down that Jim brought up, we are seriously looking into potential marketing ideas to not just, because we do market to the hospitals and to outpatient stuff, but we need to market more to the community so people feel comfortable and they want to go there. I'm with you on the food thing. That's a personal issue to me because I'm a bit of a chef, and I would want to be in a retirement home with a very nice dinner. It's also an area where I'm convinced that if it's an area that we need to find more budget room for, we can. Being able to buy fresh fruits and vegetables and things of that nature are slightly more expensive, but they are more healthy and they are more enjoyable. So that was brought up in the meeting as well. So I hope those all things can be addressed, and that will be something I take personal interest in and will be watching.
Good, thank you.
Ms. Petrie?
I did take time to attend the meeting last night and would like publicly to say I appreciate the reports from our two board liaisons to the nursing home board. I have several concerns to take away from that meeting. Census is down, but expenses are up, and there was not, in my view, sitting there listening, a good enough explanation for that happening. The second is, if you look at the curves on residents over the years, the curve line isn't going up very much, and that's sort of like a cosine wave, up and down. The explanation, without any data or any credence, is that it's cyclical, which is what Gary reported. I asked Gary after the meeting if there wasn't some way we could look at what is happening with the other nursing homes in the county to see if in fact it is cyclical. That gives us another set of data to figure out how to plan things out at the nursing home, or if there are other patterns. So if there are other patterns, then we need to know that so we know how to address it and do whatever needs to be done to improve the census at the nursing home.
It's okay. To that, it's very hard for us to get information from private nursing homes on what their numbers are. They don't publish them as easily. Can't call them up and say, hey, how you guys doing? Very well. But there has been the other nursing homes comparables we were reported were down as well. And when you look at the map, you can see where it goes up and down. I think this is partially related to the last big media catastrophe we had over there. Also, I'm not sure, Gary, but were the boilers part of the expenses of March because they put the new boiler in? I can't remember if that was in April or March. That may have been part of the increased expenses.
I believe those were, the boiler was installed in April, and I'm not sure that we have all the cost in yet on that boiler installation.
As always, gentlemen, thank you for your reports. I feel like we have a lot better handle on what's going on over there than we have in the past, and that's largely to your credit. Are there any other comments or questions about the nursing home? Mr. McGuire?
More of a comment, maybe it has something to do with the costs. It looks like agency nursing costs are down, and it has a trend going further down, which is very positive for the nursing home and its costs. So just wanted to add something positive to finish up with.
Thanks, Jim. Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to budget amendments and transfers. The first item is item D1. No. Have we been doing that? We have been doing that. Yeah. Thank you. Motion by Mr. James to accept the nursing home report and place it on file. Second?
Second.
Mr. Langenheim. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. On to budget amendments and transfers again. The first one is item budget amendment 13-00020, $5 pass-through for the GIS consortium. May I have a motion to forward this to the full board? Mr. Esri, second. Ms. Schwartz. Discussions or questions about this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed? We'll forward that. 13-00021, this is for the coroner, $625 to cover grant money received from a public health grant. May I have a motion? Ms. Cowart.
Second.
And Ms. Berkson. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 13-00023, budget amendment from the circuit clerk. And we also have a matching amendment, 13-00024 from the circuit clerk. May I have a motion to forward both of these to the full board with a recommendation for approval? Mr. Jay and Mr. James. Ms. Blakeman, would you like to talk to the board about these?
Good evening, and I promise I will try to stop bothering you with budget amendments. You get to see me 2 months in a row for that. This item is for an upgrade to our current jury system. This is a software that we use to select jurors, to send them questionnaires to determine who is eligible for jury service, and also to select jurors for jury summons. So we are currently in a situation where we are having a very low response rate in Champaign County, both to our questionnaires and also to our summons. So we have been looking at what we can do to improve that response rate. Because if we don't do something, we may get to a point where we run out of jurors and the sheriff will have to go and round people up. Which, if you have ever read the jury code, the Illinois jury code, the sheriff is statutorily allowed to do. So this is an upgrade to our system, and it is a one-time expenditure. There will be minimal maintenance costs involved with it, and it does not involve any general corporate funds. I'm asking for a transfer from the fund balance of document storage fund, which is in my office, to the court automation fund, which is also in my office but controlled both by the circuit clerk and the presiding judge. So this is, right now we are sending 13,000 questionnaires approximately annually, and that costs us about $1 per questionnaire. We're sending out a paper questionnaire and then also a return envelope with postage. And since our response rate is so low, now March was actually a good month, and we got almost 50% response rate for the questionnaires, but most months it's somewhere between 30 and 40%. So it's a very low response rate, and those that do not respond, we're just throwing that postage away, the printing and postage, and that is coming out of the county general fund, general corporate fund. So this would allow us to send postcards rather than paper questionnaires, and then it would give the option for potential jurors to fill out their questionnaires through an online system. They could go and fill out the form online, but they could also call a number, and it's an automated phone system. They could do a 1 for yes, 2 for no response. And if the potential juror does not want to do either of those options, they can certainly call us and we can send them a paper questionnaire. That's not a problem at all. We have talked about, we certainly can add the online system to our public access terminals in the circuit clerk's office to provide access, but Andy has also agreed to help us by adding those websites to the county to the county building, to Brookings, so if people come into the public access terminals here, and they could also go to their local library, the public libraries, and we would do some education with those public libraries on how to assist people with those jury questionnaires. Okay, so that will save us, in my calculations, approximately $5,000 a year in postage and printing, as well as $2,000 in labor costs for the stuffing and folding and preparing of those questionnaires. Now, it will also save us significantly in the labor costs for scanning, because right now we are required to scan all of those paper questionnaires, and this will capture all of that information digitally. It will no longer be required to scan those documents. In addition to that, the other part of this upgrade would allow us to add an opt-in program for potential jurors to opt in for text messages and emails alerting them when they need to appear for jury service. So the day before, they would get a text message or an email saying, you need to appear at such and such time at the Champaign County Courthouse for jury service. If they are not required the next day, they would get an email or text message the evening before, letting them know that they do not need to appear. So all of this is in an effort to make it easier for people to serve, easier for them to fill out the questionnaires, easier for them to serve as a juror in Champaign County. And we believe that this will significantly improve the response rate. In other counties that have implemented the same upgrade, they're seeing a 70 to 80% response rate from their questionnaires. And so this will allow us to have a more diverse jury pool and provide the best possible opportunity for justice for citizens of Champaign County.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. I think it probably may go a little bit beyond finance, but for the 4 or 5 people out there who are watching this, hopefully people will learn something about how the jury system works. Are there any comments or questions for Ms. Blakeman? Mr. Richards.
I did. Ms. Blakeman, can you tell us how much this was going to save a year again?
So I have calculated that this should save the county $5,000 annually in postage and printing, an additional $2,000 in labor costs for the stuffing and folding, and then we're estimating about $7,000 annually in the labor costs for scanning.
And that's not actual labor positions. That's probably going to be a 2,000 savings in your, 2,000 worth of work savings in your office, probably.
Well, these positions are actually currently to the county, to the court administrator, and they're part-time positions. They come in when they are needed, and they are not here when they are not needed. So it may actually be a
Okay,
real
so this
savings.
would literally be a 2,000 savings. Okay.
Ms. Petrie, did I see your hand?
That's very impressive statistics for the improvement that you are reporting of other counties who've implemented this. I'm really fascinated that this little bit of change upset that much. So I would be interested after it gets implemented in
We
saying-
certainly will track all of that. And I will say,
Okay.
I don't anticipate that in the first month, we're going to have a 70
No,
or
I
80%
wouldn't
response rate.
anticipate that.
The other counties had a much better response rate to start with. Part of the
okay.
issue in Champaign County is we have such a
Key
transient
ingredient.
community that, with the university, we have a large issue with, turnover of addresses. We have also added sending the addresses through the change of address database monthly, which is a minimal cost, but it is certainly worth it in the savings we see in the postage. So I do anticipate, we're hoping at least for a 10% increase, but we will certainly track that, and I would be happy to share that with you.
Okay, that's very important. If it isn't as good as 10%, I do hope that you will explore other reasons why there isn't
Absolutely.
a response rate, because I can't believe it's a simple mechanism change that is the Kickstarter. There are other things going on.
Absolutely,
Okay.
and I'm very interested in that. And going along with this, once this is implemented with your approval, I would like to, Judge Devanis and I have talked about a media campaign to stress the importance of jury duty and how important it is for people to respond to those jury summonses, and explain how easy it is to complete your questionnaire now, how easy it is to serve, but we certainly will explore other options.
Yes, Ms. Petrie, please keep it brief.
I thought that, isn't there a jury commission?
The jury commission is responsible they're the only people that are able to dismiss jurors.
Oh.
That's their job.
Okay, then I'm thinking of the wrong thing. What is the group that was formed by a previous board to encourage people to respond and increase the diversity of jury members? Are they engaged in this process?
They have not been involved in this process. To my knowledge, there used to be a county board committee that was looking at that. Deb, maybe you would.
I'm going to give Deb a moment to answer this, and then I'm going to reel this in because we're getting pretty far afield from finance. Deb?
There was basically a citizens committee, and Judge Stefanis worked with it on the jury selection process, but they wrapped up their work before the current term of this county board and before Katie was circuit clerk.
Thank you. If there are no additional comments or questions, would all those in favor of forwarding these to the full board for approval, please say yes. Yes. Anybody against? Thank you. And Katie, you may as well stay there. I will do the Children's Advocacy Center real quick. May I have a motion to approve the application and acceptance of the grant for the Children's Advocacy Center as described in the packet? So moved. Mr. Jay and Mr. Maxwell. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Thank you. Now we'll go back to the circuit clerk. We have a request to pass an ordinance electing not to be subject to the provision of the Illinois Clerks of the Court Act. And since I have no idea what this is, I'm going to let you explain it.
Absolutely. This is really just a house cleaning item. As I was looking for all of the ordinances and resolutions that have to do with fines and fees in my office as a part of a greater project to look at all of our fines and fees, I could not find this ordinance, which led me to believe that we did not have one. So this is the ordinance in your packet. There is an identical one that exempts Champaign County from 27.5 of the Clerks of the Courts Act, and there is a second paragraph 27.6 that is essentially the same thing, but we do not have an ordinance exempting us from 27.6. This has to do with the way we calculate our fines and fees. In counties of larger than 2 million residents, they often will calculate using a percentage formula because it does allow for more money to go to the county. However, in smaller counties or medium-sized counties like ours, the percentage does not work for us, and we have calculated it that it results in more revenue from the county calculating it itemized.
And to clarify, this is the way we've been doing it,
This is
right?
the way we've been doing it for 20 years.
Now, given that explanation, may I have a motion to forward this to the full board for approval? Mr. James and Mr. Langenheim. Are there any discussion or questions for Ms. Blakeman on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Thank you. And now, finally, Ms. Blakeman is going to give us an overview of circuit clerk operations and revenue.
Thank you, and thank you for bearing with me on this. I thought Deb and I had discussed this is not something that's been done in some time from the circuit clerk's office, so this is just a basic overview of our operations, what we do, what our revenue sources are, and just to answer some of your questions and give you an in-depth look into our office. And especially with the number of new board members, we thought that this would be helpful for you all. Okay, so these are our primary duties and responsibilities and services that we provide. The primary responsibility is that we are the keeper of all the circuit court records. That, and we collect and disperse all of the court-related fines and fees. So those are our two biggest responsibilities. Beyond that, we have a lot of responsibilities with regard to the statistical reporting of dispositions of guilty or not guilty to various state agencies, including the state police, including the Secretary of State's office, Conservation Police, and others. HFS would be another one. We also provide passport services, and as I discussed earlier, we send jury summons from our office. And a little known fact about the circuit clerk's office, some of you know this, but all county elections, for the most part, are handled by our county clerk, with the exception of drainage district elections. So those elections that are held the second Tuesday in September from 2 to 4 p.m. In each of the 67, well, not all 67 drainage districts, only those that with elected drainage district commissioners. So that's a little known fact about the circuit clerk's office. Okay, so here's a few little statistics about our office. In the past calendar year, we had 35,000 some odd cases. We have approximately 750 visitors to our office every day. We get 600 to 700 phone calls daily. We provide $9.5 million in revenue, and I'll explain a little bit more about where that revenue goes. And we have 37 full-time staff members. Okay, so as I mentioned about the number of cases that new cases that are filed each year in Champaign County, in the past 10 years, our average has been about 44,000 cases annually. This has reduced in current years primarily due to the economy, so that has gone down a little bit, well, significantly, but we do have 24 different case types. That would include all traffic, criminal, civil, which would include lawsuits, divorces, child support cases, every court case type you can think of. We keep records and have been keeping records since the 1830s. And the state determines for us how long we are to keep those records. Some records, like wills, we have to keep in the original format, in the original paper format indefinitely. We keep them forever. Other case types, we are allowed to destroy after a certain number of years, but we typically will microfilm those, and those are all, that's all determined by the state of what we are to do with them. Once we microfilm them, then we can destroy the paper records. Also, not on this slide, but we do also keep the evidence from closed cases. That includes criminal and civil cases. So we do have an evidence locker in the basement of the courthouse, and we do keep evidence in that space downstairs. The majority of our case information is available to the public. Some of that information, a lot of that information is available through our website, but any case that is not sealed or impounded or otherwise restricted to the public is available for viewing in the circuit clerk's office. So if there's something you're really interested in learning about, especially we have a lot of genealogists who come to the office and learn about different cases, you are welcome to visit us between 8 and 4:30 Monday through Friday. Okay, so this is a little bit about the revenue. As I mentioned, we have last year we collected $9.5 million in revenue. The largest chunk of that is for Champaign County. That is, in the past year, $4.6 million it was represented revenue for Champaign County, $1.45 million in revenue for the state of Illinois, $1 million on behalf of our 45 local governments, including townships and municipalities. That represents $1.5 million in child support that was collected and dispersed to county families, approximately $223,000 in restitution to crime victims, and about $1.5 million in investments, which is primarily held bond money. Okay. So these are the current projects that we are working on, and so I'm just giving you a little bit of information about each of these projects. The biggest project that I'll give you some more in-depth information on, have some good numbers on the savings, is 4G scanning. That is a project that has allowed us to essentially electronically file documents that are generated within my office. So it's any document that's generated by the circuit clerk's office that does not require a judge's signature, that requires only my signature. In the past, what my staff would do was create this document, print it, manually file stamp it, print a patch sheet, which would attach that document when they scan it to the docket entry, and then send it to scanning for it to be scanned. Now, all they have to do is create the document, and the process that we've set up in JANO, it allows us to digitally file stamp that document, and it is digitally captured. So it does not have to be sent to scanning. It is already scanned. And then it prints 2 copies, one to be sent to the individual and one for the file. Eventually, we hope to not have to print the second one for the file. But we have, when I get to the next slide, I'll let you know how much we have saved by doing that. We've been doing that for about 45 days now. The next huge project is ADR, which is short for Automated Disposition Reporting. As I mentioned, all the statistical reporting we do to the different state agencies, most of the time what we are doing is mailing a paper form to those agencies, and then they are manually entering that information in their systems. ADR is a process that goes through the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts and will allow us to send that information electronically. And when I show you the next slide, I will keep the same records on how much this saves us for the county, but at this point, it's going to be so huge that I can't even fathom how much it's going to save us. It's an enormous amount of savings for us, for labor costs particularly. And ADR is the linchpin for everything else we want to do in the county in terms of automation. It is laying the groundwork for us to do electronic pleas of guilty so that people, instead of having to mail in a traffic ticket with their plea of guilty, would be able to go to our website and plead and pay at the same time. But in order to do that, we have to have a fully functioning ADR system first. And the same thing with e-ticketing. And so that, we have been working with the sheriff's office and various police agencies to work on an e-ticketing program that would allow police officers to write tickets and submit that information electronically to our office. So we would not have to manually enter each of those traffic tickets every day. So those are a couple projects we're working on. We, as we talked about last month, we are doing a child support JANO conversion, which is the last case type that was not done on JANO, and that should be completed in the next month. We have added some public access terminals to our file viewing room, and we are adding additional public access terminals in the lobby so that people will be able to fill out forms online and print them. And what we're doing with that, we're not spending any county money to buy new computers in order for us to do that. What we're doing, as we have budgeted for this year to have new PCs for my staff, we are rotating out the old computers, and IT has been very, very helpful with us on that. So let's see what else. We talked about the jury system upgrade. I have been working with the sheriff on directional signage in the courthouse. We did a survey at our counter to see what kinds of questions we were getting when people come to when they come to the circuit clerk's office, and in 1 month alone, we had more than 350 questions about where is my courtroom, where is the bathroom, where is this, where is that. So I'm working with the sheriff on new directional signage for the courthouse to provide better service for that. Okay, so as I talked about 4G scanning, right now we are scanning 46 different document types this way. It's a total number of documents of 37 some odd thousand, and a number of pages that we have saved that we have scanned, or actually that's a number of pieces of papers we have saved 6,494. That represents 13 reams of paper and 126 hours of work. And this is just an estimate. I actually asked my staff today about how much time it was saving them to do things 4G rather than the way we were doing it previously. One of my staff members mentioned to me that the one document that she was processing, it used to take her at least 4 hours in the morning, and it's taking her less than 2 hours now to do that same process. So it is reducing her time in half for that particular document type. And this represents so far an approximate little over $2,000 in cost savings. And with the number of document types that we're scanning at this point 4G, that would save us approximately $12,000 annually. But if we get to the point where we are scanning all of the documents that we are allowed to scan that way 4G, we estimate it should be about $30,000 a year in cost savings. Okay. So this is some information about our different special revenue funds. I know that you all know that the Circuit Clerk's Office has a number of special revenue funds. The first of these is the Court Automation Fund, which is shared between the Circuit Clerk's Office and the Circuit Court. So any purchase requests are signed off on by myself and by Judge DeFanis. The current fee level is $10. The minimum is $5. The maximum is $15. And this is charged on all civil cases, on all criminal felonies, misdemeanors, traffic, ordinance violations, and conservation cases. The authority is set by statute, but the amount is set by the county board. The purpose of this fund is to defray the cost of automated record-keeping systems. Our expenditures this year are $356,533, and the revenue is $242,600. And I checked the current fund balance today, and it was just over $24,000. Okay, the next one is document storage. That current fee level is $5. The minimum is $5. The maximum is $15, and it's charged on the same case types as court automation. And it's similar to that fee in that it's set by statute, but authorized by statute, but set by the county board. And this is to defray the cost of establishing and maintaining a document storage system. And primarily what we use that for is to convert things to microfilm. So where court automation would pay for things like the annual maintenance contract and for new PCs for the office or for the circuit court or for new automation projects, document storage is primarily, it does pay for salaries of the record-keeping department, but it also pays for whenever we send things to be microfilmed as we are required to do by the state. So there you have the annual expenditures and revenue and the current fund balance, which is very, very healthy. The Child Support Service Fund, the current fee level is $36, and there's no minimum or maximum. It's set by statute. That's charged only in child support cases, and it is for maintaining child support records and the processing of support orders. And the annual expenditures are certainly more than we have been taking in, as we had not been collecting it for the last couple of years. And the current fund balance is over $400,000. But we are collecting that fee again, as we are required to do by statute and by the county board ordinance, as I discussed last month. Okay, the e-citation fund, that is a $5 fee that's set by statute and is charged in traffic, misdemeanor, ordinance violation, and conservation cases, and it is to defray the cost of establishing and maintaining electronic citations. So we talked about that a little bit. We have not been spending out of that yet because we do not have an e-citation program in Champaign County yet. We are taking in about $20,000 a year, and the current fund balance is a little over $40,000. Okay, finally, we have the Operation and Administrative Fund. It's not a fee because that is something that we receive money. If the state requires us to charge a fee, for example, there was one in the last legislative session on the State Police Merit Board fee. They would ask us to charge this fee, and we would get a percentage to come back to the Champaign County Circuit Clerk's office, and that is to, it's related to, we're supposed to spend that on the collection and for things related to the collection and disbursement of those fees to the state and local government. So our annual expenditures right now are $120,000. We have a little bit more than that in revenue, and so we have a decent fund balance on that. Typically, we have spent money on this from this fund on our annual file folder order that is approximately $50,000 a year. We have so many cases. We have to have a very specific file folder as set by the state, even with state guidelines on the color coding of those file folders. So that is what we spend that on. But I would like to see us spending that money actually on accounting department salaries because it is most related to the collection and disbursement of those fees. So I hope that gives you a better overview of what we do in the circuit clerk's office and a bit more information, probably more than you really wanted to know, but I promise I'll only do this every so many years.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I've certainly found it interesting. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, Katie, I saw on your statistics that you have 750 visitors per day.
Mm-hmm.
Is that physical visitors or is that like website hits? And
that is physical visitors.
Okay.
And that was calculated partly by the statistics kept by my counter staff, but also in talking with court security and the number of visitors to the courthouse. And we know how many of those visitors come to our office. It's at least 50% of the people who come into the courthouse will come to our office. A lot of times they'll come more than once. First to ask where the courtroom is, then when they come back from court, then they come to pay their on a traffic court day, we could have 1,000 visitors.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Rosales.
I noticed, Katie, thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed that. I noticed that in one of your slides, you had indicated that you were converting paper files and storage to microfiche or microfilm.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing anything with digital storing? Isn't
Anything-
that a lot less storage space and
Well, the
conversion?
things that we microfilm, we are required by the state to microfilm. That's the only medium that is rated for long-term archival storage. Since we're required to keep so many things indefinitely, that's the only medium that that's rated for 500 years, which is And it is actually a pretty small amount of space that it takes up for microfilm. But all of the things that we are microfilming, we are also imaging at the same time. So if you want to come in and see that case that's from, 10 years ago, you don't have to look at it on the microfilm machine. We have imaged that, and you can view it from one of the public access terminals in our office.
And maintenance for that equipment? I would imagine bulbs and just.
For the
pure-
microfilm machine?
For the microfilm machine, yes.
To be honest, we really don't do much maintenance on it because we don't use it.
Okay.
We aren't actually doing the microfilming. We send that off because there's a very specialized, it's a very specialized process that has a lot of state guidelines. In order for us to do that in-house, we would have, it would be a lot of cost and labor and very specific people. The microfilm machine, it really very rarely is used. And in fact, since we have been imaging everything, we have been talking about just moving the microfilm machine to the basement because the general public does not need to use the microfilm machine because they'll be able to view it more easily on the computer. And then we just are required by statute to keep it on premises.
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. Are anybody else have comments or questions? Mr. Carter?
I have one about the Children Advocacy Center.
Mm-hmm.
What you do for them?
The Children's Advocacy Center is not part of the circuit clerk's office. Is there?
No, Mr. Carter may have confused. We had that item on the agenda in between the circuit clerk's two items. So that she doesn't have anything to do with that. The Children's Advocacy Center is a group that's funded by grant money that works with sexually abused kids who've been involved in criminal cases.
There was the child support.
I thought I seen it up on
There's the child support service fund, and that is a fee that we collect in child support cases, and that is to pay for the maintenance of those cases. And it also pays the salaries of my child support department and all of the.
So you're really not affiliated with? Okay, I'm
No.
sorry.
Oh, no,
I
that's
see it up there.
Sorry, Mr. Carter, I wasn't sure if we were talking about Children's Advocacy Center or child support, because the circuit clerk does collect child support,
Yes, we do
right?
collect and disperse child
The
support.
state's attorney enforces it, and
I'll
the
ask
circuit
that
clerk collects
question.
it.
Go on to the next one. I'll ask that question later.
All right, thank you. I just had two questions, one specific and one more general. The specific one is about e-citations. How are we doing on that? Because my understanding is we looked at that a while back, and there was an issue getting all the various law enforcement agencies to use a common system.
Well, where we are on that, for one thing, the Supreme Court just passed, actually, in the last 2 weeks, the standards and guidelines to be approved for e-citations. So in the past, if we had done it, it would have been a pilot program. So now we actually have the process to do this with the approval of the state Supreme Court. We had been looking at a vendor that would be virtually it would be just a transfer of the $5 fee that we collect directly to that vendor, and they would take care of all the equipment, all of the software, and the support of that equipment and software. The challenge had been that until recently, they did not have a crash reporting option with that software, and the various agencies, they didn't want to buy 2 printers and 2 software programs that would print their crash reports and then their e-citations on 2 different things. They have come up with a solution on that, but we are, there are a couple agencies who are not quite satisfied with that yet because it doesn't yet talk to ARMS, but we can write an interface for that. So I do expect that we will get there. It won't be tomorrow.
Okay,
But
thank
I am
you.
interested only in a vendor that would allow us to go county-wide, because I don't want to do this piecemeal, or
Yeah,
it's
thank
not
you.
going to help me.
And a more general question is, how are you determining how to attack these problems? Are you looking at what other counties, other circuit clerks are doing? Or are
Yeah.
we sort of in the lead on some of these?
I have become active in the Illinois Association of Court Clerks, and we have meetings, we have zone meetings, which are regional, and then we have conferences that I have been attending that have been extremely helpful. I've also been appointed to the Technology Committee for the Illinois Association of Court Clerks, and the other counties represented there are McLean and DuPage, which are very, very advanced in their automation in their circuit clerks' offices, so I'm really looking forward to learning more from them. And the other county represented also is Bond, and they are actually really, really going well with their
Okay,
automation.
thank you. Looks like good things are happening. Any other comments or questions? If there are none, we'll let you go and move over to the county administrator for the General Corporate Fund 2013 budget and budget change reports.
The budget projection report is at your desk this evening. The revenue is coming in fairly stable as projected against budget. You'll see the very top line. We are projecting the loss in property taxes, and as you know, that's due to the Carl not being required to pay this year. A little further down, you'll see an increase of $315,364 in non-business licenses and permits, and that is a reflection of the current upward trend in the real estate transactions that are going on throughout the county. The second group of numbers are basically the sales taxes and income tax, and they are all performing just a little bit better than what we have budgeted for the year. Although I will say they have been a little volatile. We received sales taxes in March. For the month of January, they were up 8%. We received sales taxes for February in the month of April, and they were down 2%. So, but overall, it looks like we should be okay for the year. And then general government revenues are also, they're trending down a little bit against budget, but not significantly, so that the total anticipated revenue at this point is right at 101% of budgeted. And then moving on to expenditures, we are still projecting that we will underspend in personnel in all areas at this point: regular salaries and wages, SLEP salaries, SLEP overtime, and fringe benefits. We also predict that we will underspend in postage. We will absolutely you will see a budget amendment at some point for purchase document stamps, which again is a reflection of the expenditure side of that great real estate business that we're seeing. Also looks like we will overspend in gasoline and oil and other commodities. Gas service and electric service are doing really well, better than any time at this point in the year for the last 10 years. So we're projecting that we will underspend in those two areas. Medical professional services, that will spend more there than originally budgeted, but overall services are anticipated to be down. So when you look at the summary, you'll see that on the actual budgeted side for fiscal 13 right now, we have a $722,000 deficit budget, but on the projected side, it looks like we could end the year revenue positive in the amount of about $340,000. And I don't have a budget change report because the budget didn't change this month for General Corporate Fund, but I did provide you with the announcement that we got last Friday that the fiscal 2013 budget has received the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award again.
Mr. Richards.
So pretty much everything in fiscal year 2013 year-to-date is less than 2012, except for the all other transfers. Was that paper pushing for the nursing home?
Correct.
Any other questions?
I will say that year-to-date fiscal 12, at this point, we had one more payroll than we have this year, the way the 3 payroll months fall. That's going to hit this month.
Mr. Harkey.
And this may be me forgetting, when you say these numbers, are you counting the extra month we have in this fiscal year because of our readjusting to the
That's
new
next year.
schedule? That's for next year.
That's
Okay,
not
thank
this
you.
year.
I wanted to be clear.
Good question, though.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions, I'd really like to thank the county staff and everyone for continuing to help control costs. I mean, I don't want to celebrate yet, but, things are certainly looking better than they have in recent years. May I have a motion to accept these reports and place them on file? Mr. Harkey and Mr. Quisenberry. All in favor say yes. Yes. Anybody opposed? Deb has a recommendation for fiscal year 2014 non-bargaining employee salaries as we move into the budget process.
The memo is in your packet. Basically, every March and April, we conduct some form of a salary survey comparison with comparable counties and with jobs that are comparable within this region in market. And for the non-bargaining positions, management positions this year, as a result of that survey, We are recommending that the salary ranges be adjusted up for market by 2%. This will be the first time that those ranges have been adjusted since fiscal year '09 or December 1st, 2008. We are beginning to lose ground in having competitive starting salaries for many of these management positions, and therefore that recommendation is being presented. The other part of the recommendation is that you also approve a 2% wage increase for all of those non-bargaining employees as well, which includes non-exempt and exempt positions. Your personnel policy dictates 3 steps in the annual salary administration process. The first one is for market adjustments to the ranges and salaries of employees based on cost of living and market, and that's what I've just outlined for you. The second step is called compa-ratio movement. The policy states that in the first 7 years of employment in a position, that an employee will move from the minimum to the midpoint so that they're guaranteed to be compensated at the midpoint by the time they have been in a position for 7 years. The midpoint is considered fully competent performance in a position, and we figure if someone isn't fully competent in their position after 7 years, they shouldn't still be in it. However, we have not been able to fund those compa-ratio increases since 2009, and I am not recommending that they be funded this year either. If they were, 34 of 115 non-bargaining positions would receive additional adjustment for that compa-ratio movement. And the third salary administration plan salary increase that is included in the policy is for merit adjustments. And again, because of continuing fiscal constraints and very conservative revenue increases, there is no recommendation for an increase for merit increases for fiscal year 2014 either. So the total recommendation is for 2% to the salary ranges for non-bargaining positions and 2% to the salaries, which is only a 2% increase to the employees' salaries. It just means they will maintain the same position in the salary range that they have this year.
Thank you, Deb. And to clarify, this, if this recommendation is accepted by the full board, this will go to the department heads, and it'll be what they're expected to use as we look at our budgets for fiscal year 14. Are there any questions for Ms. Busey? Ms. Petrie.
Since you do not feel we're in a good enough budgetary situation to do some of these salary bumps, do you have concerns that that will then cause some staff turnovers that will be in the long range hard for the county?
We are not seeing a great deal of turnover at this point in time. And there is a comparable with the bargaining employees with regard to this issue. These are somewhat like longevity bumps, and at least for all of the AFSCME employees in this current contract, we eliminated all the longevity bumps for those employees as well. So it does seem to me like there is some equity it'd be nice if we could fund it, but we couldn't fund it for the AFSCME contract, and at this point, we really can't afford to fund it for the non-bargaining positions either.
And if I could add to that, 2% is about what the union contracts are calling for as well, right?
That's correct.
Across the board.
Well, most of the FOP contracts
And I
end
know there's
this
some variation
November,
between the
but
contracts,
yeah,
but-
for the most part, yeah.
Okay. Ms. Schwartz.
A quick question on the table. Is the 2% relevant? What are we talking about? The mid? Because the max is certainly more than 2% increase. So what is the 2%?
The adjustment is to the midpoint,
Okay.
and then the maximum is a certain percentage over the midpoint, and the minimum is a certain percentage under, 80%
so-
to 160%.
But if I'm looking at the max for 2013 and 2014, it's a much higher increase than 2%.
For all the ranges?
Well, I'm using it, just not that close. Okay, I'll do better. Okay, so just as an example, for grade M, the max for 2013 is 100,249. in the max for 2014 is 109.
Oh.
I'm just, I mean, but
No.
all of them kind of look, so what am I looking at wrong?
There's a mistake there. The max for range N is a higher percentage, and that formula got applied to all the other ranges, and I apologize, I meant to have the corrected version for you. I will get it posted for you, yeah.
So it should be 2% less.
It will be, yeah,
Good catch.
yeah.
Mr. Maxwell?
Deb, when you make these surveys, do we price in the price of the benefits, or is it strictly surveying the salaries?
These are salary surveys because we've also done comparable surveys with other counties, and our benefits are very comparable with the other counties, so we only do salaries with them. And with the private sector, generally speaking, the benefits from this report indicate some similarity with the benefits that we have. So these are salaries only.
Any additional comments or questions? If not, may I have a motion to forward this recommendation to the full board with a recommendation for approval? Mr. Hartke
Second.
and Ms. Schwartz. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed? Okay, and finally from Deb, we have a resolution establishing the budget process for fiscal year 2014. It's that time again.
And for those of you who were here last year, this is very similar to the process that we followed last year. I will point out a couple of changes and additions. First of all, the calendar for the process is there for your information. The first item after the calendar on page 61 notes the change in the fiscal year, which gives direction that this will be a 13-month fiscal year. I would note under the general corporate fund budget request that we are again recommending 0% increases to non-personnel expenditure lines unless the department head can demonstrate that there is a contractual increase required by a competitively negotiated contract for service, or there is a documented need for an increase based on commodities prices. And the department heads will verify those to you in their budget presentation or their budget documents if they are asking for those increases. Really no changes for the non-general corporate fund department budget preparations. Under the capital asset replacement fund, this includes a recommendation that we go back to fully funding capital for equipment, which has not been done since 2009, for funding future reserve as well as current expenditures. And you will also see there that this directs that the capital asset replacement fund be budgeted to include the recommended amount from the County Facilities Committee to be incorporated for facilities in the fiscal year 2014 budget. The contingency fund at this point is directed to be appropriated at 0.5% of the general corporate fund total appropriation, which would mean there would be a budget of $170,000 in contingency. So those are just the things that I would point out to you to make sure that you are in agreement with those issues as you approve this resolution.
Thank you. Are there any comments about the budget process or questions for Ms. Busey? Ms. Petrie?
Yes. The budget process is set department by department. Since it's set in sort of a siloed configuration, is there much opportunity for these departments to have any cross discussions to see if there are means and ways of cooperation and thus potentially saving some budgetary monies?
We have done that
With
no success. It continues to be something that I think that we can talk about and look at. We definitely did it for the fiscal year 2010 and 2011 budgets. But at the end of the day, most of the department heads and elected officials are reluctant to comment on others' budgets because they really are concerned about their own budgets.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, may I have a motion to forward, did I already take a motion? No.
No.
May I have a motion to forward this budget process resolution to the full board for approval? So moved. By Mr. James, seconded by Mr. Esri. Further discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Any opposed? Thank you. Deb, you want to start on the IMRF report?
This is just for your information, and quite frankly, it's overall good news because the RMRF rate for the regular and SLEP employees will be less in fiscal year 2014, so that's good news. The RMRF rate for the elected county officials program will be significantly higher, but the reason for that is it is now collected on only 2 county officials' salaries, and we have obligations with regard to ECHO for others who have already retired, so that's why. So you will contribute in IMRF 150% of salaries for those 2 positions.
I'm sure that seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
Any comments or questions on the IMRF report? If not, we have no other finance business. I have no chair's report. Items for consent are D, 1, 2, 3, and 4, E1, F1, and G3, and that concludes finance.
Thank you, Mr. Alex.
Mr. Kurtz.
Mr. Quisenberry, please take the chair.
All right, good evening. I was going to say Mr. Alex's efficient running of a meeting moved me to tears, but I think it's the trees exploding outside that's really causing this. So bear with me if I start crying in the middle of the meeting. It's nothing you've said. So, okay, the first item we have on our policy, personnel and appointments agenda this evening is Resolution 8435, appointing Stephen Hawthorne to Sangamon and Drummer Drainage District for an unexpired term that will end in August 31st, 2015. I would entertain a motion. Mr. Esri? Second by Mr. James. All right, is there any discussion? I will point out that you may have a sense of deja vu because we had an appointment, a nomination and an appointment for this in February, but I believe there was additional bonding work that this person had to provide to take the role, and this resolution is with that bonding completed. Is that correct, Ms. Busey? All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Okay, next, I would like to omnibus these next 3, which are for the Sangamon Valley, Dewey Community, and Penfield Water Districts. And Mr. Kurtz, would you give us your nominations, please?
Thank you. Sangamon Valley Public Water District, there are 3 vacancies that run from June 1st, 13 to May 31st, 18. They are all incumbents, Robert Buchanan, Michael Melton, and Robert M. Guthrie. The Penfield Water District has 2 vacancies, but we could not find a second applicant. It's getting more and more difficult to have volunteers take on some of these responsibilities, but we have Mr. Randall Zindars as one of the appointments. And on the Dewey Community Public Water District, the same, 2 vacancies, but we only have 1 applicant, Mr. William Roller.
All right, do I have a second? Mr. Maxwell. Okay, any discussion regarding these appointments? Yes. Mr. Langenheim.
I should like to point out to the board that we're reappointing 3 incumbents to the Sangamon Valley Public Water District. The Sangamon Valley Public Water District is currently involved in extreme controversy. You may want to consider that. I am going to vote for them.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Carter.
Again, who are they? You know them?
I don't know them personally, no.
Well, I keep a bringing up
They are
this
they are
question.
incumbents, you have your applications in front of them, and so
Well, are we
I base
supposed
my
to-
appointments on their,
I know,
on their
I
expertise
know.
and background, and they've been
Right.
on this water district and many districts for a long time.
I know, Mr. Chairman, but we got to vote on them, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, then, if you bring them up here tomorrow, I wouldn't know them from Adam. And I'm just saying, you know, if they want to serve a position, at least they should ought to want to come here and introduce themselves, you know, at least. Now, we'll vote on them, say, yeah, but who are they? You don't know. And this is embarrassing if it ever come up.
Point well taken, Mr. Carter.
Are they shy, or what's the reason that they can't come? You
I-
know,
If we knew them, we might be able to answer that question, but we don't. Mr. Maxwell.
I do know a couple of them. One of them's my neighbor, Mr. Melton, and Mr. Buchanan I know also. I've talked to some folks over there. These are all good quality folks. They've served before, and they have good experience. Mr. Buchanan is particularly adept at finances and budgeting, so he's a real asset to the district.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell.
well, I want to vote on them, but Mr. Chairman, can you get them? I'll go ahead and sacrifice the vote.
I can only ask.
Well, that's what I'm
And
saying.
so I told you that I would start to do that, and as you saw tonight, in the next appointment, you will see the actual person here. Okay?
Right.
Okay.
No, that's all you can do is ask.
That's right.
And I'll go ahead and sacrifice my vote, but this, you know.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passed. For our next appointment, we have the appointment for the Board of Review, one vacancy, which is designated to be a Republican selection for June 1st, 2013 through May 31st, 2015. Mr. Kurtz.
First, I want to thank my appointee, Ms. Diane Hayes, for coming to each caucus, introducing herself, and letting us know what she looks like. So Mr. Carter could actually see the live, living person that is really going to be on the Board of Review, hopefully. And I'd like, Diane, please, would you stand up so that everyone can recognize you once more? My appointee for the Board of Review will be the first appraiser certified in the history of the Board of Review. So I want to, what's that? Okay, thank you. My appointee is Ms. Diane Hayes.
Do we have a second? Second. Mr. J. Seconded. Any discussion?
Well, I just want to apologize
Mr.
because I
James?
was late to our caucus, so I didn't get to meet you, but I did see you talking to Stan, so I didn't interrupt.
Thank you. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. All right, unanimously passed. Next, we have an appointment to the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District, one vacancy, which is designated as a Democrat, and the term will be June 1st, 2013 through May 31st, 2016. Mr. Kurtz.
And a very familiar name for sure. Ms. Jenny Putman is my selection.
Seconded by Mr. McGuire. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say, Patsy?
Was that the only application that you received for the sanitary district?
Absolutely.
Was it the only one?
What's that?
Was it the only applicant?
Oh, yeah, it was.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carter?
You want me to bring her in too?
Maybe we should have this a part of the application. And that'll solve this problem. Let them know, put it on the application that you have to appear before the board.
Mr. Langenheim.
Just for the record, Ms. Putman has contacted me on several occasions in the last few weeks with regard to the problems with the water out there. And she's already at work on her job.
I think a number of us got some letters on it.
Okay.
And,
Mr. Carter?
well, Mrs. Putman, the boy, she been I don't know who don't know her, you know. The lady really served this community for a long time, so I don't think we have any problem with that one.
All right.
No. In fact, her name is on
Picture is
a
always
roof
looking at
back
us,
there, right?
in the public.
Exactly right. I'm
All right.
sorry, Laura.
I'm going to proceed with the vote. I almost got in a few moments ago. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Another unanimous passage. And finally, for the Rural Transit Advisory Group, the seniors representative for an unexpired term ending November 30th, 2014.
Mary Sleeth is my appointee. I'm sorry, what? It's 13, isn't it? Is it a 14?
11/30,
I have 13 on it.
2014.
Oh, yeah, it is the 14.
It is.
Okay, we'll make a change in that
Be a
number.
short trip.
14, yes, it would. Well, sometimes their unexpired terms are short. Up to 14.
Mr. McGuire seconds it, but only if it's 2014. All right. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signified by saying nay. Okay, moving right along. You all have the county clerk's report, and the clerk is present tonight. I would entertain a motion to accept the report and place it on file. Was that you, Mr. Langenheim, that moved that? And Mr. Alex, I heard a second over there. All right, any discussion or questions for Gordy? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Next, we have item C. There's also something on the addendum with item C, and I see our state's attorney is here tonight, potentially to answer questions if needed. I would entertain an omnibus motion for sending all three of these to the Job Content Evaluation Committee for review.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kurtz, seconded by Mr. Jay. Okay, Madam State's Attorney, would you like to give us a little bit of detail on this? Button in the middle.
In the middle and the bottom. Got it.
Essentially, these three positions are a restructuring of a number of positions in my office based on retirements and job changes that have happened over the past year. There is no additional funding being requested. I'm working within my budget and basically revising the positions to meet the needs of my office as well as, quite frankly, the needs of the county as a whole. The most significant one is the request for a chief of the civil division position. Essentially, this would be a very high-level position, an attorney who would serve the county board as well as all of the county departments with regards to legal advice. As you are all aware, we are involved in a number of very significant legal issues going on, and quite frankly, I have two attorneys who handle the civil arena for the entire county. One of them handles the employment side. We're going to have a number of labor contracts coming up, and the last time we went through this, he was hard-pressed to serve everybody adequately, and we ended up hiring outside counsel. So part of this is to alleviate a lot of the pressure on the two attorneys who are handling the civil arena right now, and to give you all, as well as the other county departments, somebody to utilize in a better way than we've been, quite frankly, handling our civil responsibilities. Again, the funding for that position would come based on restructuring within my office, and that includes the office manager and senior executive secretary positions. So currently, the responsibilities for those two positions are shared essentially between a higher level position and my secretary, and these two positions kind of equalize that and divide the responsibilities between secretarial and staff management on the one side and more the financial paperwork, day-to-day running of a very large office side to the office manager. It's a better division of responsibilities and labor between those two positions than we've had in the actual structure in the past. Again, no additional funding is being requested. I think I can say that over and over and over again, just to ensure you that no additional funding is being requested.
Okay, and the civil chief is both going to be a coordinator of those efforts and a person, a lawyer giving advice and doing some of the work.
Oh, yes,
So
it's an
expand-
attorney position.
Management and work as well.
Right. Currently, the structure in the office is the state's attorney, then the first assistant, and attorneys underneath. This would create basically two different divisions, with the chief of the civil division being at the same level as the first assistant, but the first assistant would be primarily and solely responsible for the criminal aspects, and the chief of the civil division would be responsible for the civil aspects of things. So that's more in keeping with the responsibilities of the office, dividing those two.
And how many existing employees, those not retiring, are going to be affected by these changes?
In what sense?
Is somebody going to have their title changed who's staying around?
Not in a negative way.
Okay.
So as far as the office manager and senior executive secretary positions that are being proposed, those would be upgrades for current employees.
But one of them is close to retirement? Is
No,
that-
what is her title? Teresa's title. The executive assistant to the state's attorney, Teresa Smith, is retiring after 30-something years with the county. And so her responsibilities are going to be divided between someone who's currently a paralegal and my senior administrative secretary, who would both be moving up in salary grades with that addition to their responsibilities.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Josh?
Well, especially while Katie's still here, I love seeing that our executives in this county are being dynamic with their offices and finding ways to utilize who they have in the best way. My experience at IDOT was when a position was created, it was never gotten rid of. I think they still had a guy for feeding the horses hay over there. So,
Horses need hay.
yeah, so
I'm
thanks.
all for that.
Thanks for doing this, and it would have my support, definitely.
Thank you.
Mr. Alex?
Josh, you took the words out of my mouth. I just wanted to say this seems like an example of playing to people's strengths, and I'm all in favor of that.
And I do have to thank Mrs. Busey as well. She was very helpful in working through the numbers and helping me work out the position analysis as well.
All right, Mr. Carter?
For recent for you there, I just want to know the true advocacy program, what did they do? Education or?
The Children's Advocacy Center?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Mr. Carter, because you were confusing me with JJ before and then with Katie. So I'm happy to answer that question, because I'm the chair of the board of the Children's Advocacy Center, and that is a county agency where we bring children who are victims of sexual abuse. They're interviewed in a child-friendly environment. The facility is located out at this Public Health District building. They are interviewed by trained interviewers from the police departments and the Department of Children and Family Services, and then they and their families are linked up with services to help them get through the traumatic situation that they've been involved in. So that is a county department. I'm the chair of the board, and it's a wonderful department. The request that we have in here was, it's entirely grant-funded. There is no county dollars that are used to fund that department. We have a variety of grants that we seek annually, and so we have to ask you all for your approval for those grants. But again, doesn't cost you a penny.
Good.
Yep.
I just want, in case I have to send somebody over there.
Well, and if you want a tour, I'd be happy to make those arrangements
Okay.
for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Further questions on the item at hand? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Unanimous. That just goes to the Job Content Evaluation Committee, and then we will see it back once there's a recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Julia. Moving along, we're into Section D, where we're on the Administrative Services Monthly Report. Can I have a motion to accept this and place it on file? Mr. James, second. Mr. Esri, seconds. Any questions for Deb with regard to the report? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, next, we have a request to send to the Job Content Evaluation Committee a proposed Deputy County Administrator of Finance position. You have the job description in your packet. This is a request from Deb to hire someone with some significant financial background to do a list of tasks that are itemized in the packet, focusing on budget, finance, labor negotiations. Deb, do you want to add anything to that? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Jay?
Second.
Second, Mr. James, and I would entertain discussion. Mr. James?
Well, I would just say that I think this is a good position to finally get on board. I know at one time we had a co-administrator, and I, for one, have always worried, even though I think Ms. Busey does a wonderful job and is a great person to know, we never know health-wise or any otherwise if something was to happen. I'd like to see this county have some sort of system that someone could step up to the plate, so to speak, and take the reins and run with it, much like General Haig did when whoever got shot. But that's why I think we need this. I think it'll be a good position, and I think Ms. Busey, knowing her the short 10 years I've been here, she's a wealth of knowledge, and somebody needs to soak all that in, and I think it's time we move on this.
Are you in charge here, Mr. James? Mr. Alex?
Just a couple of comments. I'm in support of this proposal. You know, at one time, we had a county administrator and 2 deputies, and then when Jackie left, we went down to co-administrators, being Deb and Denny, and then Denny retired, and we were left with Deb. And I think, you know, Deb's done a great job seeing us through some difficult times, both in terms of her leadership and in terms of her ability to, you know, keep all the balls in the air for one salary. But Mr. James makes some good points. I mean, I'm a little bit concerned at the fact that we do have all our eggs in one basket, so to speak. I think we really, as we go forward, need to look at diversifying some of this knowledge of the county's operations across multiple people. Also, I mean, it's just a unique situation here, which is that we know Ms. Busey isn't going to be here indefinitely, and one of the things that I'm concerned about is that she have more time available to focus on documenting her responsibilities and transition planning as we look forward to what we're going to need to do to ultimately replace her and what type of a position we would want to replace her with. I want to stress that this is not an effort to replace her. This is an effort to bring on a second person to work beside her, preferably somebody with a strong finance concentration. And finally, I think, you know, we've talked a lot about how we may be able to benefit by reaching out more to legislators, reaching out to the community more, so beating the bushes for grant money and other sources of funding for the county. And I think if we can bring on somebody to take care of the more boilerplate aspects of the budget and the finances, that would, to some extent, free up Deb and likely her successor to have more time to go out there and work on our behalf. So I'd say, you know, it's great to say we're saving money by only having one administrator, but I think that's not without risk, and I think that to some extent, there's a false sense of economy if we're, leaving money on the table by not having somebody who's out there, working on our behalf outside of the Brookings Center. So I'm entirely in support of this. Again, all this does is goes to the Job Content Evaluation Committee to see how much we probably have to pay such a person, and then we'd have to decide how to do a search and who'd be involved and so forth. But I think this is a good first step, and I'm going to support this.
All right, Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to address this issue. My comments are directed in part to Ms. Busey. This resolution proposes, if passed, to establish the position of Deputy County Administrator. The board will be delegating authority to the county administrator to select the deputy administrator if this does go forward. The board will be tasking our county administrator with considerable responsibility, and that she could be selecting her successor. It is my hope and expectation that she will carefully conduct a thorough, open, and fair selection process, and that she chooses a stellar individual for this position. I believe employing a deputy administrator is warranted. I believe the county would be well served by providing Ms. Busey more time to focus on the broader aspects of public administration, including areas of planning, contract negotiation and contract enforcement, personnel management, risk management, project management, and assisting the county board. I believe Ms. Busey has served the county well and could serve our constituents even better with the employment of a deputy county administrator. I intend to support this resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. For the last 4 months, I have worked closely with Ms. Busey, and I can tell you the volume of work is just astounding that she has to accomplish on a daily basis. I see it close up every day. And I can only say that I have to give her accolades for the past, 4 years now, that she's been working alone, running our administrative staff and our employees. And this is a necessary addition as a deputy of finance, which would help her to alleviate her from some of the more difficult jobs and be able to focus on the administrative side. So I certainly am in support of this appointment. Thank you.
Mr. Jay.
Thank you. I think I, unlike the rest of them, are hoping that Deb stays here for a long time. And my purpose in securing her some help is maybe she would stay longer if we'd give her a break. We'd like her to have a chance to catch her breath. She's done an outstanding job without question. We all know that. And so I think we need to look at this two ways. The person we hire may or may not fall into her shoes, but at least we'd have somebody to let Deb take an extended vacation if she wanted to or something. I support this, of course.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah. Well, I never heard any complaint about Deb. And I've been here ever since before she was, really. And I'm kind of wondering where, she has been outstanding. And I think when her help left, she was evaluated. If I'm not misunderstanding this, wasn't you? And I think we voted on it according to your exceptions. So I don't know what is the complaint here? I can't understand what we're going. That she is acceptable. Well, she can't be beatable. I'll just tell you the truth. She's been outstanding. And I haven't heard any complaints about her performance. So I'm kind of wondering, and if the agreement that we made is under, then it's up to come back and say, hey, let's redo this, you know. But I think it should come from her personally. Because I do recall when we reduced this from the position that, well, I don't like, you know what I'm saying. When he left, we did go and you know, and she accepted the conditions then, and we voted on them. So I'm not against if she have, you know, if she want to have a re-evaluation, fine. But I haven't heard any complaint about her performance. No, thank you.
All right, Mr. Alex, second.
I was just saying, yeah, this is not about Ms. Busey's performance at all. In fact, she's enthusiastic, I think, for the possibility of getting some help on this. So this is not at all a negative on her. It's a way of preparing for the long term. And I'm going to let Mr. James know that General Haig passed away in 2010, so he's sadly not available. Thank you.
Patsy?
Well, I do understand the expansion of things that the board is requesting the administrator to do, but I do have a couple of observations. The criteria laid out in this description is fairly stringent criteria. Actually, if Ms. Busey was applying for the job, she wouldn't meet this criteria, so this interests me. And when I look at the criteria and I mentally calculate the potential salary and then benefits on top of that, I think we're talking about a budgetary item of $100,000 to $110,000. So that's something that we need to be thinking about in relationship to what comes down the line and how we'll handle that in our budget. We seem to be thinking that all of a sudden we have all this money in the county, and I really don't think we do, and we've begun spending a lot of money out. And so we need to be thinking about these aspects. Everybody in the room who has spoken for Ms. Busey and why she needs this assistance. I would actually like to hear directly from Ms. Busey where she, or how she defines her role as, according to this description, so much of what she really spends a lot of time is being shifted to another individual. And so I'd like to give her a chance to talk about, if this comes to pass, how she sees her role and how she sees a deputy underneath her playing things out.
Well, I think I've addressed that in the memo that's in your packet this evening, but the ordinance number 837 has a lot of requirements in it. I am frequently asked by board members about special projects and things that the board would like to see done, and currently it's not possible to do those things because there's simply not enough time. So by shifting the responsibility and oversight of the budget and some of the finance-related issues which are important to the county board, your county administrator will then, as has been stated here this evening, have more time for special projects when they come up. We'll have more time to give more oversight to some of the issues that currently there's a lot of just really general, just high level instead of in-depth administrative work on some issues that are relevant to the county board. Certainly, on a regular basis, there is, brought up here at the county board that we should be looking more at grant funding, and quite frankly, there is just not the opportunity or time to spend a great deal of time on that. I think you've seen in the preliminary ILPP report that there are opportunities to do more with services and to look at how they are done. I think that with this position and having two people, that we'll be able to implement much better performance standards for the departments. We'll actually be able to conduct financial analysis or analysis of statistics so that we have a better idea of how things are working. You brought up earlier this evening the fact that our budget approach is somewhat siloed. We don't reach out to the public as much as we should. And a lot of that is just the result of one person doesn't have the time to do all of that kind of development. And I think with two people working on these initiatives together for the county board, that we will be able to see much better development in some of those areas. And so that's just from my perspective what it will bring. It was also mentioned earlier this evening that to produce a really good transition plan so that when I retire, it is seamless to the county board. That is also a goal here, and it's something that cannot be done. I can't, if I want to organize files, I have to come in on Saturday or Sunday. There simply is not enough time during the day because of dealing with department heads, board members, the public, people from the outside, with just requests for information and assistance, and then the work that also needs to be done. So ordinance number 837 is really the answer, and more comprehensively addressing what is intended is what I believe is the benefit of going to this structure.
Do you have some rough timeline in your head, should this get approved finally, where you see the time it might take to get somebody into this position?
Yes, and I would want us to be sure that we advertise in all of the right places, like the Illinois Association of County Administrators, the Government Finance Officers Association. I mean, there are a lot of good conduits for recruiting that are available for this position, so I don't want to rush. Once the board has provided authority for this position to be posted, I think it probably is going to need to be posted for at least 6 weeks to make sure we hit all of those possibilities for recruitment. And then I would expect it would take another 4 weeks at least to go through the evaluation and hiring process. So I'm really thinking that based on the current time frame, it would probably be optimistic to hope that we bring someone on board in September.
Mr. Hartke.
Yeah, you kind of hit on what I was going to say there, in that there's a potential hope that this position could be a revenue positive position, in that they can gather information on grant money, they can have more time to look at the nooks and crannies of the budget, you know, and handle those things. So I think this is a good position. My only concern is, you know, someday, way in the future, when I'm an old bald man and Deb does retire, I hope we consider doing a real nationwide search for a county administrator and don't just jump to promoting this person into it. So that's my only concern, but I will support the issue.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I think this is something we should have a special meeting over, not tonight. I think the chair should call a meeting and discuss this problem, like we used to, and come up with some sound consensus of what the problem is and solve it.
If you're waiting for me to respond to that, I don't intend to call a special meeting to address what is a staffing and reach problem in our county organization. I mean, I think it's important that that tonight in our meeting that we talk about this. We will also have an opportunity when the recommendation comes back from job content to talk about the position. Then we'll also know how much it might cost us, which is a better place to be when we're having.
That's what I'm saying.
So I don't think we need a special meeting to do that. I think we need our board members to recognize committee of the whole is a committee. It is a place where we can sit around this table and talk about issues. This is not like a done deal. This is a process that's being started. It's going to come through this committee 2, maybe 3 more times. Hopefully not 3 more times, but it could. And this is a committee. This table is round. We're all looking at each other. We can all talk about it. There's going to be plenty of time to talk about it, Mr. Carter. I understand that you want that discussion and you want that opportunity. I think it's here. I think it's in this committee in a month. I think it's in this committee in the future.
Well, I just make one observation. We have went in closed session less than this. That's what I'm saying. So it's up to your discretion how you want to run your meeting, but we always went in closed session when something like this come up, and not the whole public.
I don't believe we're discussing the performance
up to that,
of an
okay.
employee. I think we're discussing the capacity that we need to address. But thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Well, then, if there's no other comments, I'll save mine to the last. I think this is an appropriate path for us to be walking down. I think there's plenty of path to walk in this process. We need to get this to job content evaluation so we can know how it's going to be classified, have an idea of what it might cost. But I can say from my 4 months of working with Deb that there are two positions that she's doing. She is being effectively the chief executive of this county, and she's also being the chief financial officer of this county. And both of those things are pretty big jobs, and both of them require more than one person can do. And so I think this is where we should evaluate. We have the opportunity here to, I know Patsy noted the CPA, and I believe it's optional. I don't believe it's required. The CPA requirement. Yeah, that's in there to see if we can pick up, maybe some added skills or added depth in the finance area that we may not have in that official CPA capacity currently. So I think that's a good opportunity. I will tell you, I hope that there may be somebody else who'll be chair of policy personnel and appointments when we have to deal with Deb's retirement. I hope it's not me. I hope there's somebody else that gets a chance to show leadership, but or it's so far down the road that I've moved on. But I will assure everybody around this table that when we get to that point, if I am that chair, it's my full expectation that we're going to do a national search for a new chief administrator of this county. And while someone who works for several years in that budget and finance role might be a candidate, I don't think it's a shoo-in that they would be the next choice. And they may not want to be. They may like staying in the budget and the numbers, and that's where their skills are and that's where their strength is. I can say that after they learn a little bit about what it takes to be a chief executive in this county, they might have second thoughts about taking on the whole mantle. So the other thing is we haven't determined the details of the process of identifying this person, and I would welcome any input that people want to give me on the side outside of the committee with regard to their expectations with regard to that. So that being said, I will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that passes. And moving on, after I wake my iPad up here, we're in section E, and we are going to take up some potential positions regarding legislation that would impact the county and our business. And I will ask Mr. Kurtz to speak to first potential opposition to House Bill 924.
Thank you. This was seriously and in length discussed at the Legislative Committee of the United County Councils. Not only will it affect Champaign County, it'll affect all counties in the state of Illinois, and this legislation will supersede, in most cases, local ordinances. And I found it to be a bit problematic when it comes to small contractors, minority contractors, and because of the timeline, the United County Council's Legislative Committee voted unanimously in opposition to HB 924. Many of them are small counties, don't have large contractors in there, and would have a problem getting bids from minority and small contractors and would have to go outside the county for those bids due to this legislation. After unanimous approval by the legislative committee, I sat down with Ms. Busey on how it would affect our county. And because of the urgency of the timing, because policy wasn't, the next time policy is tonight, I penned a letter, a personal letter, on county letterhead to a number of our legislators discussing my opposition and why, and I think the letter is quite explanatory as to what I feel would affect us and affect other counties and our taxpayers, and the cost of rising contractors' contracts. So I felt strongly that at the first chance I could get to bring it before the policy committee was tonight, but because it was going to the floor for a vote, I sent that letter out on my own, and you notice it states me. It doesn't state that the county board was in approval of this, and so I brought it to the county board this evening. As you read the letter, I'm sure you'll understand why I felt that way, and if Ms. Busey wants to give you a little bit of a heads up why we felt that this was detrimental to the county, do you feel like you'd like to comment on? Stated it fine? Okay, in the letter. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got some real concerns with the proposed legislation. The former board of Champaign County is on record of supporting minority contractors and small contractors. In fact, we went to great lengths to try and get them involved in some of our projects. We weren't too successful, but this is absolutely a roadblock for a lot of those to even have a chance. It's not necessary, it's protectionism, and I would adamantly oppose and agree with your letter, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carter.
I want to say as a minority contractor, which I tried to make my living, as the lady stated over that, that's always been the big myth about minority contracting. The first thing, minority contracting have even been designed to fit some of your disadvantaged contractors, which should come under that same umbrella. Now, when you say minority contractors and small business, most of the time you talk about a guy that's worth $1 million. That's the standard. So when you come up with a minority contractor, a small contractor, they go get a finance, who they gonna pick? They gonna pick the guy that's got the $250,000 or the $500,000. So the guy below that is always left out. And it's a shame. And another thing, Champaign County never supervised small minority contractors. They don't provide the bidding procedures properly. You get a set of specs. You show me where you had a clause in there where you are supporting a small contractor. It's not in there. So that's how they get by and manipulate going out and try to find minority contractors because the law is not there. And they know they don't have to do it. So it's really sad. Well, he knows I used to, when he was at the housing authority. Don't get me in trouble. Well, no, you were the huncho then, and I was bidding, right. You know where I'm coming from. And, okay, your bidding procedure is hard. Then after you get the contract, now you all know, you might well tell the truth, Some of the bigger contractors don't want to fool with the small ones anyway. Which the law is there, but it's never supervised. This is what I'm saying. He is supposed to show that he make the approach and go out and try to get minority contractors, but he don't. And all he do is put on his phone and say, well, I couldn't find any. Well, that's not true. Because you have a whole state roster of small and minority contractors. The state has that. So don't tell me you can't find minority contractors. Wrong. And another thing, I can tell you right now, if a small contractor, minority contractor had did the courthouse, you wouldn't have the problems you had now. You wouldn't. Because every time I had a contract, I had to sign each pay period of how many minorities, how many Indians, and all. I couldn't get my check unless I had that in my package when I go and submit for payment. Now, how do the other guys do that? How they get paid without having the same procedures? See, I lived through it, I know. But they do. They go right on, get a contract, and all them documents, nobody worry about supervising. They supervise a parking ticket more harshly than they do human rights. I'm telling you, it's sad. And most of your contracts is union. I was union. So you don't say you don't have qualified people because you got the union contract. I mean, you get your workforce from the union. So they qualify, but it's just the disadvantage you go through. Thank you.
I have Mr. McGuire next.
Okay. I guess part of this, because I had the same concerns about this, and I've seen it brought up about minority contractors, so I'll start with that. And the change to the law, because I have it up here on my iPad, actually discusses those issues because it talks about effectuating contracts, and then it addresses the issue of minority contracts, and it says that they should identify and report to the public body in charge of the project the number of hours worked by minorities and females as defined in the Illinois Human Rights Act for each craft or type of worker and mechanic needed to execute the contract. For each contractor and a subcontractor shall provide this information on a certified payroll or on a monthly manpower utilization report. No later than October 1st, I missed a chunk of that because it doesn't really change the law. Once of each year, the following state agencies shall submit a report to the General Assembly compiling the total number of hours worked during immediately preceding fiscal year by minorities, females, reported in accordance with subsection, the Illinois Capital Development Board, Illinois Department of Transportation, on and on and on. So I'm not sure where the part is coming from that this will preclude minorities, because obviously the law includes that that there's some tracking to make sure that minorities are included. This is a procurement policy. There's a procurement policy change. And I think this is what the law mostly includes, that they're supposed to be responsible bidders and individuals and firms meeting the requirements of Section 3022 of the Illinois Procurement Code. Like the person talked about earlier, the county already has one, project labor agreement, those sorts of things. And it may be more difficult for some groups to be part of that, but there are federal and state laws that require, for which the Act is trying to address, those contractors be prepared to pay the prevailing rates and follow the law. Now, the county's obviously doing that. The state's trying to make sure that's being done in county contracts throughout the state. Now, it's up to all of you to want to see that happen. I understand that it's some there are requirements there, just like we all have to, are required to do things by law throughout the state, but, you know, to file a resolution against following those regulations, maybe we'll have some success, maybe we won't.
Okay, I have Josh next, and then Mr. Rosales, and then Astrid, and then Michael.
Yeah, I have some concerns with this resolution, mostly for a couple of reasons. One, I feel it's, whenever we talk about minority contractors, we also have to remember there's plenty of minority workers who are members of these unions that are affected by this, who will have more chances at apprenticeship and training, will have more guarantee of prevailing wage. And again, I want to reiterate what Mr. McGuire said about part of this law being specifically about tracking the number of hours worked by minorities and females. So it seems to me that this law is moving towards finding ways to at least track whether we're accomplishing this. And if these resolutions are really effective for us as a county board to pass them, then I think we need to set up a real process on how we go through this. I mean, we talk about how we don't want to get involved in any too politically hot-button issues or issues that don't directly deal with the business of the county, but it seems like we're kind of loose on how we define those lines. I would like to see us look at a resolution supporting marriage equality, because that's something that the county does. We issue marriage certificates. I'd like to see us look at a resolution regarding Citizens United, because every person in this room is going to have to raise money to run for office again. So, those are certainly things that are at least tangentially related that we've been told we just can't even look at, and yet this pops up on a meeting. I also have some real issues, regardless of who signs it, of a letter going out on county board letterhead supporting or against an issue that the board has not cast a vote on. I realize there may be timing issues. Perhaps that timing should have been looked at ahead of time, or it should just be given up, or a special meeting call, or I have a real issue with that. I don't think that's correct. And I really don't see it's our responsibility to fight for smaller counties, since we are a county, one among the 30 listed here, and most of them being large counties, similar, and quite a few smaller like Cumberland, et cetera, who follow this procedure anyway. If we're going to hold ourselves to this policy, then I think the state should be held to this policy as well in general. So I'm pretty solidly against this. I think that it's somewhat anti-union and anti-worker, and I also really think there's a generational issue here, because the part about apprenticeship is about training the next generation of workers to learn to do a job, and I worry that we're not requiring that kind of investment in our country, and I want to push for that kinds of investment. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Mr. Rosales.
Well, I should have raised my hand a lot quicker, Harkey, because you took all the words out of my mouth. I would hate to impose upon any elected official governing body our advisory vote, because this doesn't have any bearing other than advice. And I think Harkey had put the hammer on the nail that we will be getting into political implications that are not within our purview of the county to govern. This is basically state legislation that should be kept at the state level. And I think, Al, that you should have written it on your own letterhead from your businesses instead of our county business, because I think it muckety ups the water politically when you're opposing local unions that supported your campaign and have supported the county in many of the issues pertaining to one minority business and women business. And I think this sort of guarantees the fact that there will be a checks and balance, because I have heard many other contractors on state projects hire day laborers, which are Hispanic and minorities, and they don't give them the benefits, they don't give them that they're entitled to as a certified employee of that company. They just come on the job, do the work, so when you do a visible check, you might see one or two, but they're not employees of that company. They don't get a retirement plan, they don't get any of the health benefits or any of the insurance benefits. They're just day laborers, and if they get hurt, go home, and I've seen individuals do that on the contracts. So I would oppose any resolution coming out of this board or any message to the state on county letterhead that would indicate or oppose or agree on any of these resolutions that are being addressed currently. I think there is a process for interest groups, and there's a process for citizens to vote for these legislative officials to take action on those concerns. So I would encourage our citizens within the Champaign County to write letters, either opposing or supporting any of these legislations. But I would definitely oppose us as a county board elected official to advise another elected official board to take action. So I would have to oppose all three.
Okay, Astrid?
Well, first, I like to keep our money at home, and I think any law that makes you go outside the county to issue contracts is probably a bad idea. And this looks to me, I don't know what a certified apprentice program is, but it sounds expensive. And I suspect what that does is eliminate a lot of the local businesses in favor of some big outfits from Chicago or something like that. It smells funny to me.
Mr. Richards?
I'm going to vote no on this. I do not think that we should get involved in the food fight between the Illinois Chamber of Commerce and the Illinois AFL-CIO. As to the specifics of the bill, we've heard in the past 5 minutes that this will both be horrible for minority contractors and so good for them that a number of counties aren't going to be able to take part in this. There are provisions that will help minority contractors, and I think that we can vouch for the Illinois AFL-CIO's argument that this is not going to hurt small contractors because we have this program and we have small contractors. Now, this bill is supported by the Illinois AFL-CIO, the Champaign County Building Trades, Champaign County AFL-CIO. I would encourage everybody to vote no, either because we have better things to deal with or because they don't want to take an anti-union vote.
Mr. Alex?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, to some extent, this is kind of a moot point. I mean, Champaign County passed this ordinance and passed this policy in 2002. It's ordinance 666, and I went back and I looked at I waded my way through HB, whatever it is, and through the procurement code and through our ordinance, and as far as I can tell, our ordinance aligns pretty well with the language that's being proposed in the House bill. I mean, the issue with the apprenticeship program, I mean, this isn't basically saying you got to run an apprenticeship program. It's essentially saying, you know, you can't come into the county and say, yeah, well, this guy's a journeyman and these other 100 guys are apprentices, so we're not going to pay them the prevailing wage unless they're actually apprentices. And the way you show they're actually apprentices is you have an apprenticeship program that the Department of Labor says, yeah, that's an apprenticeship program. I mean, I think this is essentially the status quo in Champaign County. I think there's potentially some risk for very small shops, but I think in general it's probably a good thing, and I certainly don't think it's worth the county's time opposing this. I think let's let Springfield do the right thing.
Mr. James?
Well, I guess I would say any time that a decision by our state leaders hits home, whether it be here at the county level or in the village of Rantoul, that those that are elected to seats need to step up to the table and make their voices heard one way or the other. I know that the state's going to rule any way they like, and citizen input and county board input and village input does help at times. I haven't read the whole law, so I truly can't comment on the law as it stands, but if there's concerns, that's why we're here to discuss it. And as far as someone writing a letter on county letterhead, if they're addressing it and that's their elected office to do so, and they're not using everybody else in this room or any other department to say we all support this, I feel that's a perk that comes with that office. I sat in a chair, and if I had my board nitpicking me every time I sent a letter out to somebody, I'd probably resign. So I think when we talk like that, we got to be mindful that the letter was written with good intent, whether it be this letter or any letter that Deb Busey sends out, any memo. Sometimes I think we've all forgot, you know, when we grow up that there's a lot worse things in the world than a little word that's going to hurt us. We nitpick things for way too long. And again, I go back to this, and no, I don't want to see resolutions coming up here all the time that are laws and rules that really have no bearing on the outcome, whether it be a medical procedure or what have you. But when you're talking about a law that may impinge on the cost of this county to do contracting work without truly understanding it, I think it's a tough call. But with that said, so I would just say that whoever writes those letters and they're using that letterhead, more power to you. You've got the power to do so.
Okay, we're going to the second, sometimes third comments from individuals. I would ask people to break new ground if you get another chance to speak. I had Mr. J, I had you, had your hand up. Did you want?
That was my colleague, but I'd certainly speak if you want to give me a chance to do it.
Well, I saw your hand.
Well, okay, just very quickly.
Mike, please.
The apprentice program is one of the things that concern me. Small contractors cannot survive in a workforce with the bigger contractors with this kind of provision. This don't say that you might have to do it. It says you do have to do it. And an apprentice program is expensive. And I think we all need to step back and take a breath. I think Mr. Kurtz has a right to send a letter to whomever he wants to. He is our county board chairman. He don't speak for all of us, obviously. He never listens to me, but I don't hold that against him. Thank you.
I have Mr. Richards is next.
Just wanted to ask for a roll call on this and point out the apprenticeships are through the local unions.
Noted, and I have Mr. Carter as next, and then Patsy's been waiting patiently, and then Mr. Maxwell. Mr. Carter.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, the federal government can hold your money. The law is there, they can. If you don't meet the requirement of the minority and small business, they can hold your money, and that's on the books. That is law. Now, what's been happening, nobody have been able to file a complaint, which I'm going back now and tell you where it started. When they broke the air pilots union back in the 80s. From then on, the unions have been functioning right. The traffic controllers, they hit the traffic controllers. They broke them. See, I used to be a union steward. And when you serve agreement, that agreement would go up to the highs and be processed. Now you pay union dues and you file agreement, you might not even hear from it anymore. Because what they done, they stripped the labor department from all of their rules. I used to didn't have to get a lawyer. I'm one of the old guys that would started when they first put out for me the action in hoping to negotiate it. And I know what's in it. I said, we are getting by with not following the rules. And that's the truth. The University of Illinois have a 12-point program for minorities. They don't. I called it, the chancellor up, and he said, yeah, we have. I said, well, where's the money going? He was surprised. He said, well, haven't it been processed? I said, no. You see any minorities? This is the problem. Some way we able to get around the laws that's already on the books. They are there. And about the program, I sent 4 of my apprentices to Parkland College Electric, and through 601 Union. 3 of them come behind me and got licensed. Right here in Champaign. So don't tell me, I know what's going on. The political ramification here in Champaign County is so upward, you can't even get a lawyer. A small contract, go to a lawyer,
Mr. Carter, can you speak to the point of the vote, please?
Well, I'm just saying, I hate to see it go down, but at least let's sit down and discuss it and see what the merits are, because the laws is on the book if you want to enforce them. You don't need no other law. They're already there.
They haven't spoken at all. All right, Ms. Petrie, you haven't had a chance to speak yet.
Thank you very much. I'm going to oppose this. I do not understand why in the world we would oppose this bill when we have the very same thing on our own books. We did it in 2 pages. It took Representative Madigan and his cohort 16 pages. But basically, it's exactly the same thing. I see no reason for us to take the stand. I won't go into the other arguments why I don't think so, but we have it on our own book. So if we oppose this, then we better get that off our own resolution and pull that from our resolution. The next part is, I really encourage us, we have a big project coming up with the courthouse. We have options A, B, and C.
Patsy, can you keep it to
Yes,
the point?
I got my point, yes.
It sounds like you're straying.
No, I'm not. I'm going to Mr. Carter's point, and that is, and I don't understand Ms. Berkson, because we can solve this. We aren't bringing people in from outside that are more expensive. All we need to do is start breaking up our own contracts and our requests for proposals so that the smaller firms can submit contracts for us. That's something Champaign is doing right now. And then my last question, is there anybody in this room that can give us any back history as to why in the world this piece of legislation was brought up on the state level?
I'm not sure I'm going to encourage us going down that history lesson, but I have Mr. Maxwell as next and Ralph as potentially the last person who's going to talk. We'll see.
There's one thing that concerns me that this bill passes. There are many small contractors out there that are non-union, but they still get municipal contracts because they do comply with the Prevailing Wage Act. That's in the law, that they do have to do it.
That's the law.
This particular law will force these small non-union contractors into unions in order to take advantage of apprenticeship programs. And this is probably the main objective of the bill.
All right, next, Ralph.
Microphone, please, Ralph.
Have we got it? Okay. I just want to commend our county board chairman for responding to this request. It called for an answer. There wasn't time to have a meeting, so he replied. Now, he might have been wise to have consulted with a few people before he did. I don't know whether he did or didn't, but action needed to be taken, and he took it.
All right, I have Astrid and Josh, and that's where I'm going to draw the line. Astrid?
Well, Mike said that the apprentice programs are through the local unions. But what this law says is that the contractors have to participate in a certified apprentice program. I'd like to know how much that costs, because it costs enough. That rules small contractors out. It doesn't matter whether they're union or not.
Okay, Josh, you're last.
I hope to shed a little light. Well, first off, I want to say that I don't accept that this was an emergency situation that had to have an immediate response. Secondly, I think it needs some clarification on about the apprenticeship program, in that the requirement is for people to get qualified as having apprentices, they actually have to have an apprenticeship program and get the prevailing wage for that. That's how I understand it. And I also take exception to the idea that this is going to cost this county one dime, because we should already be following this policy as a county. So I don't see how it can possibly cost us more because we're already following it. Other small counties, perhaps, but they're not really my concern. The people of Champaign County are. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna close it at that, and I'm gonna look over at the recording secretary, because I'm gonna point out, even though roll call was called, I don't think we had an opening motion and a second on this. We just had information, and then we had discussion.
Could the clerk read the motion?
I don't believe we had a motion, because I was conscious of that. This was a discussion in committee. Mr. Carter, while the recording secretary is looking
Discussion
this
and
up.
talking is the best thing in the world, is understanding. Now, I don't want to vote against this, really, because I would like to have the liberty of we sitting down and going through it and see what's good and bad of it. And if you're going to ask me to vote tonight, I can't, because as George said, look, I was paid by the federal government to train trainees. It didn't cost nobody nothing because the federal government paid for it. That is in there. It don't cost you nothing.
Okay. All right, Mr. Carter.
We all do. We all pay taxes.
If you let me proceed, since there is no motion on the floor, I'm going to take my chair's prerogative and not ask for one, because from what I've seen sitting up here, there is not consensus on this board strongly in favor of this legislation, strongly against this legislation. There's a lot of people who are against it. There's a lot of people who would be for it. But I think when the board issues a proclamation in support or against something, we should feel more as one. And at this point, I don't see us as one. So I would be happy to let this die, this particular one die, for lack of a motion, if you will indulge me and not make one. Everybody okay with that? Okay. And I'm afraid that doesn't give us the chance to do a roll call to see where everybody stands on this, but it's clear there's not consensus. It will go one way or the other, but it won't be a board choice. So I do want to talk about the next one, because I do feel pretty strongly that this is important to us. I will go ahead and let Mr. Kurtz explain this legislation that I think we should support.
All right. Well, I hope that you will understand how important this legislation is to our county, okay? What this local government distribution fund deposit passed the House, and it's on Senate now floor. And again, because it was at the House, I had to send that letter out quickly, because this does directly affect us. All right, it amends the State Revenue Sharing Act and the Illinois Income Tax Act, which requires the direct deposit of local income tax share into the local government distribution fund for prompt distribution to the counties and municipalities. Currently, the Department of Revenue deposits the tax payment into the General Revenue Fund, and the treasurer then transfers a percentage of the net revenue to the local government's distribution fund, which takes a lot longer, and we may not get all our money. It passed the House on April 9th with a vote of 109-2, and I supported that. I think that's very, very important to us to get direct deposit. And so that's why I would hope that this board would support this bill. Thank you.
All right, and I won't be sneaky about it this time. I think we should talk about this before we have a motion. But that's what I did the last time, but I didn't say what I was doing in the first place. Yes? I don't think so. That we're in committee of the whole. I think we can have information and questions. If you want to go ahead and make the motion, I'm not going to stop you. Motion in support of this. Is there a second? Mr. Hartke seconds. Okay, now we can discuss a motion on the floor.
In support of this.
In support of this legislation. Mr. McGuire, go right ahead.
Okay.
Don't read us the bill, please.
Yes.
Come on, I was
No,
practicing
it's
my
42
reading.
pages.
Okay, the bill, The bill would,
Order, please. Order. The motion on the floor is in support of the legislation that will direct deposit income tax revenue into a fund that will be more quickly distributed to the county. So it takes out a step that has slowed down our share of the state income tax from getting to us.
Oh, that's just this part now, not?
Yeah, this is different.
We're moving on to the next one. Okay? It's kind of like direct deposit.
direct deposit without a haircut, and that's what happens at the state. And right now, the bill is stuck in the Senate. Cullerton hasn't held in a committee, so it's very important that we do send something to the Senate to ask them to move it and approach all of our senators of all stripes to move this bill. I guess it's been up many times before, and it gets stopped one side or the other because obviously the state wants to keep their money, keep our money as long as they possibly can, so.
Well, I certainly like the idea for all of the counties and government entities. However, it's my understanding there's really no teeth in this bill. So we can support it, but who's going to make it happen?
I think that's a rhetorical question, but it's a real question. Any further comment on this? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Understood. Okay. That's the last item that we had on our regular agenda. Good thing, too, my battery's about to go. As a chair's report, I heard the commentary about resolutions like this. I will do as I have done, which is when people bring them to me, I will consider them. I will bring them to caucus. I will share them to other caucuses, the other caucus, if it feels like that it's a item that can get strong support from the county board. I will move it ahead. That may not be perfect and not to everyone's satisfaction, but I have been fairly consistent with that. In this case, this came a little faster because of the legislative nature. I also say that while I do agree with some of the comments, particularly by Mr. Langenheim, that it's best if the chair is going to send out a note that he confers with other members of the county board. I don't see a problem with an elected county chair sending out letterhead notes as long as he does not claim to have the board's approval until he actually gets the board approval. I understand why some people are concerned by that, but it is consistent with what I think has been done in the past. I also want to mention that in this light, I think that the results of the property tax exemption that has been afforded certain healthcare organizations that we talked about earlier when our treasurer reported, I am going to look into a resolution urging our state senators and representatives to make some changes to that legislation that is more equitable and shares the cost of charitable care across a broader area. And I will bring that to you when it's appropriate, and would welcome some input on that. That being said, I have for consent agenda A1, 5, 6, and 7, C, 1, and 2. Does that agree with you, Deb? And that's all from policy. Oh, what?
I'm just talking to Mr. James there.
Yeah.
It looks like he's heading out
You're
the
done with
door.
me.
We do have justice. We do have justice coming up, and I want to give Ms. Berkson her due. Go right ahead.
I have a question that I'll ask under this, because I think everybody's going to try to get out of here pretty quick. Can you explain to us what the conflict is on the mental health court?
No, I'm sorry you didn't ask when she was here, because I don't think it's been all right.
I'm on the committee for both the drug court and the mental health court. This was an internal issue between the judges, Judge Ford and Julia Reitz. There was a conflict of philosophies on how the mental health court was working. We have no oversight over their decision. Judge Ford decided to close the mental health court because of those philosophical differences. And he went to the Chief Judge DeFanis, who concurred. And so we really have no say in the matter. This was between the prosecutor, elected official, and our judges. And so I have a personal interest in it. I did send some personal letters to both of them. I was opposed to the closing of the mental health court personally. I felt the importance of those that were being affected by it would now fall through the cracks again, because we didn't have anything processed for them. And so I made that clear to both Judge Ford and to Ms. Reitz, but I can only make a suggestion that they try and mitigate their philosophies and mitigate and compromise, but
Well, I don't think it's abstract philosophy so much. I guess it's a matter of whether or not you can order a mentally ill person to take the pills.
well, that was the philosophy difference.
Yeah, well,
The philosophy.
and, that's a difficult issue. That is a question.
I was opposed to it, Mike, right from the start. I got emails from both of them explaining their positions, and I was very, very concerned about the issue. We know how successful the drug court is, and I was seeing some success in the mental health court. We already had passed out and graduated a few of the, it's such a unique difference between the drug court and the mental health court, but it's something that we have really no control over. And I just wish they'll reconsider it in the future and build a better process to work with them. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Mr. Langenheim if the Veterans Assistance Committee is going well, and if they're getting any better help from, if they're getting any better help from the other institutions around the
I
county.
didn't get to their April meeting. I got the one beforehand. The scuffling in that committee seems to have subsided. But beyond that, I have nothing to say.
Thank you.
I wasn't able to go to the April meeting.
Yeah.
Mr. Astrid, I just wanted to briefly mention, for anybody who's up this late listening, there's been some discussion about the timing of the final report to come from the Community Justice Task Force with regard to getting that information in a form that's useful for Dr. Kalmanoff to include in his report, and at the same time wanting the Community Justice Task Force to be able to weigh in on the results of Mr. Kalmanoff's report, which of course are who came first, the chicken and the egg. So I did want to let people know that my understanding is that this is being worked on. There's an attempt being made to accommodate everybody, and this will be discussed at the Community Justice Task Force meeting tomorrow night, as I understand from Ms. Busey. So we've had some conversations on it, but I just want to thank everybody for working on that and make it clear that we're not trying to, pull a fast one by not letting any. We want to hear everybody's comment. We want both of those. I feel like both the CJTF and Dr. Kalmanoff are going to provide us useful information. We want to make sure that there's plenty of communication back and forth there.
Patsy?
Yes, I've read all the reports. I do appreciate the different agencies who post their reports, but they're nothing but numbers. And the numbers are great, but they aren't giving any of us who are reading them a sense of how these different agencies are doing or functioning, or if there's issues or anything that might be of importance for the board. And I read the EMA report, and there was absolutely nothing in there about a very good and informative meeting of the various agencies who met to plan for emergency services within the county. It was a very effective and very efficient meeting. And so I'm beginning to wonder if we need to revisit the purpose of the Social Justice Committee, because all it seems to be right now is reports of numbers.
All right. We can ask the companies, the groups to supply more narrative. Right now, what the Justice Committee is mostly is Kalmanoff and the task force, and, you know, we'll be doing a lot in a couple of months. You may get tired of us. But, all right, are you saying we should ask them to provide more narrative in their reports? Because we can certainly ask that.
Well, I'm only one county board member. I haven't heard any other county board members make this comment, but I read every one of those reports and its numbers, and I still went away with absolutely no understanding of the different agencies and if they have issues or anything. So a little bit more narrative would be most helpful.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah, we have asked for executive summaries in the past, and I would like it if we would nudge everybody back in that direction and ask for those because some of these reports are just completely numbers, and I'm sure they mean something to these people, but we want to make sure that the general public and the average county board member can make sense of that and figure out, are they doing a good job? What are their needs? And I think if they just take a few minutes to basically write out what these mean, that would be very helpful for the county board.
Okay, we'll ask for that in the future. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Chair doesn't have a report. We don't have, the business. Do we have, I'm sorry, Mr. Quisenberry?
I move we adjourn.
Oh, I was about to say that, but you beat me to it. Second, we're adjourned.